Good morning, it's Friday. This is a story called The Night Colin Came to Church. I was a scheduled speaker at my church and had just launched into a prayerfully prepared and carefully researched sermon, which deep down I hope would be blindingly insightful and occasionally humorous. I had PowerPoint slides, I had audio clips, I had disco balls and pro-techniques. Well, not really. I prayed that God would use me to declare his holy message to the people. Just 3 minutes into my talk, Colin walked through the front door, down the right-hand side in front of the entire congregation, loudly announcing that he'd walked for miles to come and see if truth was being declared in this house of God. I used to come here years ago, Colin added, back when it was controlled by the reign, or by the empire. Oh dear. Some congregants thought it was planned as stunt. I wondered if the staff were playing a joke on me. We soon discovered it was neither. I walked down off the stage, shook Colin's hand in welcome, walked back to the lectern, tried to regain everyone's attention. A few minutes later, as we laughed together at a humorous aside, Colin interjected. "What was that? Did you say something about the King of Prussia? I demand that you tell these people the truth." And so began Colin's verbal dressing down of me, a barrage of breathless religious talk that was eloquent in wording, incoherent in meaning, and escalating in volume. I stepped down again and moved towards Colin, trying to communicate that I was a friend and not foe by closing the distance between us. "If you let me continue," I tried to answer, but was shouted down with more incoherent ramble. I stood for a few minutes looking this disturbed man in the eyes. With the congregation stunned and some now praying, I considered the alternatives for a peaceful resolution. Every attempt to speak turned his volume up another notch. He moved closer, his face now just inches away from mine, yelling his accusations of idolatry and heresy at me. Then he slapped my cheek and jumped up on the stage. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my sermon notes flung into the air. I turned around in time to see Colin throw the lectern down to the ground and smash it in two. This was definitely not a joke. A predominantly young audience at church that night. Some of the congregation left their seats, perhaps to help, perhaps to call the police. Startled by the movement, Colin ran off the stage, dodged back and then started up the aisle he had entered just a quarter of an hour before. Some tried to stop him, but it was best to let go. It's common for people suffering paranoid schizophrenia to believe others are out there to get them. Chasing would only inflame Colin's fears. He darted back for one last pronouncement, then ran out the door, and the church sat in silence. The congregation gathered and began to pray for Colin, for peace to return, and for God's plan to be achieved that evening. People prayed for me, and small groups gathered around individuals who were tearful and traumatised by the event. I'm proud of that church. Facing attack, no one screamed obscenities or launched football tackles. Instead, love was shown to victim and perpetrator alike. They prayed for Colin. They comforted the tearful, and I received the calls the next day asking how I was going. Wrapping up the evening, I asked the church what lessons could be learnt from the experience. One reply was most telling: how to love the seemingly unlovable. I never did finish my message, but then again, I didn't really need to. God had spoken, replacing my clever sermon with an experimental learning activity on love. This story was written by Sheridan Voisey. Have a wonderful day, and let us all love the unlovable.